Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode. Today is the 12th episode of CoinNewsExtra panel discussion. So today we'll be talking about the future of blockchain and crypto startups around the globe. We have some persons joining us with one person didn't make it. So we have with us live here William Szamosszegi. He is the CEO and founder of SaaS Mining. William, you're welcome to CoinNewsExtra.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, the Nick Abramov was supposed to join us, but he's having some issues. So we will continue with you. You are very familiar with the ecosystem, and you have your own startup that you are working with. You'll be able to know all the challenges you've been able to go through. So moving straight to the panel discussion. So is the blockchain and crypto space, startups and other businesses, is the ones in the crypto and blockchain space still facing the same challenges? Are they in the same challenges, or because the blockchain space is a new niche, are the challenges different?
Well, I think that that's a good question because, as you mentioned, it is a new type of industry. And I think it all comes back to the quote that people overestimate what they can do in 1 year, but tend to underestimate what they can do in 10. And if we look back in time to 10 years when Bitcoin and this entire ecosystem could be summed up in just a simple white paper, and fast forward to today, and we have an entire industry and an entire ecosystem that you mentioned and that we're all acting within and building within, it's pretty incredible where the industry has come in 10 years. But as you mentioned as well, there are enormous challenges in building organizations and scaling up ideas and finding ways to apply blockchain technology within all of these industries. And that's where a lot of the challenges are coming. So if we look at what was happening in the crazy bull run of 2017, and you had all of these projects that had these huge ideas for how blockchain was going to transform the world or transform their industry. And then you fast forwarded 1 or 2 years and you see it doesn't seem like on the surface there's that much more that has been created in comparison to some of these large visions. You see that people tended in that short amount of time to overestimate what they would be able to accomplish. But I also think that it's important to remember that because these things take time, a catalyst can really lead to exponential type of growth within these organizations, and especially for what everyone else is seeing on the outside and seeing what these organizations are building. So for example, the amount of news and things coming out, it's been consistent over the past couple of years, and you've definitely seen progress. But behind the scenes, the companies that are building organizations that have the ability to withstand the test of time and the market downturns, those are going to be, in my opinion, the companies of the future that are going to be those very large organizations. And the final point on this that I also think is important to touch upon is where we're at in today's global economy. We're seeing unprecedented actions, basically one in a century type of things happening on a monetary policy side, with enormous amounts of money being printed by the central banks, and in particular within the US, a lot of US dollars being printed. And what this means for Bitcoin and the entire ecosystem as a whole is, honestly, it shows the fragility of certain areas within the financial system, and many of those issues are things that blockchain and cryptocurrency solve. And so all of these factors tied together, I think, yes, it is going to take some time for these companies to grow and for the ecosystem to grow. But I also think that there is going to be massive growth within this industry, and the startups building today are going to be the ones that we're going to recognize in the future and that are going to be these massive companies.
Okay, the companies, the startups are going to grow, are going to be the ones they know in future. So, what you are the CEO of SaaS Mining, and what is he? The question is now, how can startups in this ecosystem, the blockchain and crypto space, be encouraged? How can they be encouraged? So, as the CEO of SaaS mining, the challenges you are going through with your company. How do you think startups could be encouraged in this ecosystem?
Well, I think that you can encourage startups through a number of different ways. One of the big ones, and it was much more accessible during the bull run of 2017, is capital. Of course, capital helps with growth, but aside from just capital, you also want to make sure that you're getting the best talent. I mean, I'm from the opinion that having a good team is the most important aspect of being able to build a great company, because behind these great companies, there's a very hardworking, diligent, and intelligent team that is working on that idea, that vision, that mission every single day. And that's really what allows an organization to build up and accomplish its goals. And so I think that where blockchain stands today, we're at a very good position in terms of talent. And that's very important. If you want to see what industries are going to succeed in the future and what companies are going to be successful, you want to look at where the talent is going. And you're seeing a lot of the brightest minds within technology, people who have experience and could have gone into banking, could have gone into consulting, could have gone and taken a very high paying job at one of the larger established technology companies. And they're going and they're starting crypto companies or blockchain companies, or they're going and joining another crypto blockchain startup. And this is a very good sign, because when you want to see what's going to be successful, it helps to see where the talent is going. And I believe that there's a lot of talent right now going into these types of companies, and that will pay dividends in the future for all of the people involved and for the mission of blockchain technology, DeFi, and Bitcoin.
Okay, interesting. Because the ecosystem, the blockchain ecosystem, will you say is friendly? Is it friendly for startups to thrive?
I would say, in terms of what the ecosystem is like, it's very open from company to company. So everyone's very supportive of other companies building in the space. And I think that that's something that truly stands out about our industry, is that people want other people to succeed so badly. Because, for example, SAS Mining, we're a cryptocurrency mining firm, and we have different ways that we earn money through cryptocurrency mining. But we're extremely supportive of all of the other companies building in DeFi, building custodial solutions, building other parts of the infrastructure for the blockchain and cryptocurrency space. And there's a clear value in that, because these other companies are really helping push forward the vision of this ecosystem. And in particular, they're making it more accessible. So I'll get to a very concrete, specific example. We could talk about a company like Anchorage, or any other custodial company. That company is providing an enormous, valuable service to our industry and to the new capital that wants to enter the industry. If you're an institutional investor and you want to get involved in blockchain or cryptocurrency or invest in digital assets, there's a barrier to entry, which is a major consideration. And what's that enormous barrier for these institutions? Aside from knowledge, that barrier is custody. You want to make sure that if you're putting millions of dollars into a digital asset, that you're able to custody it properly and not lose access to it. I mean, if you or I, we lose access to our bank account, it's a pain, but you could still get in. You could still go through the forget your password recovery phrase and get into your funds. And you don't have to worry about not being able to access your money. But if you lose your private keys to a digital wallet, that's a very, very messy proposition, because you very well might never be able to access those funds again. But that's a problem that's being solved on an institutional level and for institutional players by different companies in this ecosystem. And these are things and companies and startups that weren't around 5 years ago or 10 years ago, especially when the ecosystem was starting. So it's very important. And I think that overall it is a friendly ecosystem.
Okay, it is a friendly ecosystem. So, talking about startups, and you see what is happening in the world today with the pandemic. Some startups are struggling. How do you think that startups in the blockchain and cryptocurrency ecosystem can survive this period?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there are a number of very important factors. I would say the first one is to understand what your business is trying to do and also understand what absolutely needs to be spent to accomplish that goal, but also where you might have additional overhead and be spending too much money that you might not necessarily need for your life stage of the company and your life cycle. And so it's important to manage the costs, but also to make sure that you're able to continue building. And the important part here is that companies and these startups, they have certain milestones, they have certain parts and levels of the business they have to reach to be able to raise capital. And if they can demonstrate that they have the ability to build, they can demonstrate that they have the ability to connect with the proper people and really build something of value to the industry, then it makes it a lot easier to go out and raise capital. But once that capital comes in, you definitely want to make sure every dollar goes as far as possible. And the last thing that I would note on this, I briefly alluded to it earlier, but with any sort of catastrophic type of financial collapse, or if we take the most recent example of the great financial recession in 2008, this was an unbelievably difficult time for many people. And in that time, following the great financial crisis, we saw many of the biggest startups today being built because there was enormous opportunity. If you look at when the market's down, and it almost levels the playing field for all the companies out there building and involved in any industry. And if we look at the companies that were built, some of the biggest companies today, Twitter was built, WhatsApp was built, Uber was built, all these companies, Slack was built. All of those companies were built in 2009. That's when they were founded. And they had an enormous opportunity to become the massive multi-billion-dollar companies that they are today. And that is the opportunity that we're getting to the inflection point of within, I believe, blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think some of those massive companies are going to be coming out and or hitting the world stage due to the opportunity presented to them with the financial, with the global financial recession or crisis that we are facing.
You talked about Uber, you talked about Twitter. So they've been able, those we are fintech projects, they are fintech project, and there have not been some. There, when they started, there have been regulations, clarity, and everything. So coming to this ecosystem, blockchain and cryptocurrency, there have been some things surrounding the ecosystem. That's when you're talking about regulations. There have been some regulation issues, uncertainty in the ecosystem. So, do you think regulation will be stable and it will encourage startups in the space? Because when you talked about Uber, you talked about Twitter, when those companies started, there have been clarity in regulation, but in this ecosystem, there have not been clarity in the ecosystem. With you are joining us from America, and we know what is going on over there. So, do you think that proper regulation and clarity in regulations in the ecosystem will help startups to thrive?
Yes, I think that having the proper regulatory framework is extremely, extremely important. And that really is governing what entrepreneurs are able to build and what ends up being built. And you look at the different approaches that different countries are taking. and it's going to have and already having a direct effect on the businesses that are able to be built in those countries. So if we take a specific example and we look at the ability for these derivatives products to be traded, and these companies to be established within the US or abroad, a lot of the regulatory approach to these types of options and futures companies that allow people to trade options and futures, they were focused particularly on stopping companies in the US from diving into this too early head on. And what ended up happening?
Okay,
well,
let's
build it.
Sorry, I'm coming in. You will still continue. You are the founder and CEO of SAS Mining. How do you think
Yes.
regulation from your own company, how do you think regulations will help your business in the ecosystem?
Particularly with SAS Mining, we're based in the US, and thankfully the regulation is open and allows us to continue to do cryptocurrency mining. And thankfully, we haven't had some of the difficulties that miners in other countries have faced. One of the major things that also helps, as from an entrepreneur's point of view, is that when you're looking for investors, if you're in a regulatory environment that is favorable and allows you to build the company and the product that you want to build, then it makes a huge difference. And I think that we've seen that within other areas of the ecosystem and other companies trying to build. There are certain times where blockchain companies in particular have had an idea, have had a vision, and went out to go and build that company, but then ran into regulatory hurdles that didn't allow them to build what they were trying to build. Whereas entrepreneurs in some other jurisdictions might have had the free rein to go and provide the types of services that they needed to for their business. And so overall, I would say that within the US, it's a very difficult job to pick the perfect path forward and allow the proper amount of innovation while also protecting the investor, because that's what these regulations are looking to do. It's important to make sure that the everyday investor is protected. And so finding that fine line is a very difficult task, but it's something that, if done right, allows an entrepreneur to build the company that needs to be built and allows them to become very successful.
Okay, lastly on today's panel discussion, how do you see the future of blockchain and cryptocurrency?
I think that I'm personally of the view that Bitcoin is going to grow very large over time, and it's built into the supply and demand economics and the way that the protocol is laid out, with the Bitcoin having roughly every 4 years. I think that it's going to perform extremely well. All of the different companies being built within this ecosystem are enabling Bitcoin to grow and enabling the future of our industry to be very positive and continue to have major companies that affect other industries. And I think that later on, you're going to see from an investing perspective, a very high price per Bitcoin. Within the next few years, it's going to be a bold prediction, but I'll make it on this show. I think that Bitcoin will be at least $50,000 or reach that point within the next 2 years, which is over 5 times the price that it's trading at as of now. But I think that overall we're in the right spot, and huge thank you to you and the work that you're doing with CoinNewsExtra to educate and continue to connect companies with the audience in Africa and continue to foster the growth within this ecosystem. Thank you a lot.
Thank you very much, William Szamosszegi. He is the founder and CEO of SAS Mining. Thank you for joining us today.
Yep. Thank you for having me. Have a good one.
It's our pleasure.